So in section 1, you learned about exponential functions. In this section, you're going to learn how to graph exponential functions. So it's important to note that the base of an exponential function is limited to what it can be. So when we talk about the base, remember an exponential function is the form of y equals some number to the x power. So that base can be anything positive and anything that is also real. So it couldn't be like an imaginary number. That's what that means. So the values the base cannot be, it cannot be negative. It cannot be imaginary. And it cannot be 0 and it cannot be 1. And the reason that is the case is because anything to the 0 power is 1 and 1 to any power is also 1. So that doesn't really do us any good. So other than that, we're good to go. So we're actually going to skip this part about the graph because it's truly, utterly confusing and move on to this chart down here at the bottom. So your basic form of an exponential function is the form f of x equals b to the x. But sometimes they change it to be f of x equals a times b to the x. So they give it a coefficient. Well, no matter what, when you start graphing a function in the form of b to the x, its graph is going to be a curve. It does not matter if it has a coefficient or it doesn't have a coefficient. If it's in the form of exponential form, its graph is going to be a curve. And that curve is going to look like either this or this. And we'll get to it in a second how you decide which one it is, but that's what it's going to look like as it's considered a curve. So what tells us whether or not it curves up or it curves down is actually what the value of b is. So recall, because it's not on this page, that this left side is everything written in the form of f of x equals b to the x. And everything written on the right side is in the form of f of x equals a times b to the x. So the way to tell whether a graph is increasing or decreasing is that based on b. If b, this base here, is bigger than 1, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, then that means our graph is going to be increasing. That means the graph is going to go up, like that. If b is between 0 and 1, so 0.1, 0.2, 0.5, 0.7, that means that our graph is a decreasing function. It's going to look like that. So no matter what, our graph is going to cross the y-axis somewhere, and it crosses the y-axis if it's in the form of b to the x. It's going to cross the y-axis at the ordered pair 0, 1. If it's in the form of a times b to the x, then it's going to cross the y-axis at the ordered pair 0a, where a is this number that you have up here in the equation. There's one other point that you're going to have on the equation, and that is the ordered pair 1, comma, b. So whatever our base is, whatever has the exponent with it, is going to be a point on the equation, on the graph. And if it's a times b to the x, then the ordered pair is going to be 1, comma, a times b. So no matter what, there's a horizontal asymptote at the x-axis. Unless, we're going to make a note down here, unless the function, so like this, f of x equals b to the x, if it has plus or minus some number, because what that's doing is that's going to change our horizontal asymptote. So our domain, no matter what, will be all real numbers. And our range, for the most part, is going to be all positive numbers greater than 0. or in other words, greater than 0. So all positive numbers, and that's true for both of these. And again, the only exception to that is if it's got this plus or minus on there, and that's going to change our horizontal asymptote and our range. So looking at our questions, it asks us first of all, what's the domain of the function below for number 1? Our domain for every single one of these is all real numbers. That's always the domain. All real numbers. It's always the domain. Number 3 asks us what's the y-intercept of the function below. Well, again, that goes back to the fact that we have this number here on the end. Typically, our y-intercept is going to be in the form of 0, 0, 1. But we have this 4 here on the end, so that means I need to add 4 to that y-intercept, so it becomes the ordered pair 0, 5. You can always graph that if you're not sure. Number 5, what is the range of the function below? So normally our range is all y's that are greater than 0, but we said if we put a number here, that's going to change it. So it's going to have something to do with 4. And the other thing is, and I promise on your actual quiz you do not have any questions this difficult. This sign right here, the negative, is actually going to flip our graph. So instead of looking like this, it's going to look like this. So that means our range is actually going to be all y's that are less than 4. There's going to be a horizontal asymptote at positive 4. And again, I promise you the quiz is much easier than this. Moving on to number 7. It asks us which answer choice is graphed. Well, first of all, we know that this function is increasing. So that means that this number with x has to be bigger than 1. Okay, so that number we're talking about is b. It has to be greater than 1, so that automatically takes out our second answer choice. Second thing we're going to look at is our y-intercept. This is our y-intercept at 0, 3. So what that tells us is that this value here is our a. It's going to be what's multiplied. So a is going to equal 3. That means our answer choice has to be the fourth one because it's the one in the form of a times b to the x. So let's look at number 8. We're going to do this one together as well. And this is going to be more of what's on your quiz. So you look at this function, it is a decreasing function. That means that b has to be between 0 and 1. So it can't be 2 to the x, and it cannot be 1.5 to the x. So now we just have to look at what our y-intercept is. Our y-intercept is here at the ordered pair 0, 2. That means that this number 2 is our a value. So we have to multiply the part with the exponent by 2, and that's going to mean our second one is our answer choice, our correct answer choice. Number 9. So again, we look at the fact that this is an increasing function. So that means that b has to be bigger than 1. So it cannot be 1 over 5. And we look at our y-intercept. Our y-intercept is here at positive 4. So that means that there has to be a 4 in our equation. So the answer is going to be f of x equals 4, because that's our a value. That's where our y-intercept is going to be, times 1.4 to the x. And lastly, looking at this third one, we see that this is a decreasing function. So that means that b has to be between 0 and 1. So it can't be 3 to the x. Then we just have to look at our y-intercept. This crosses the y-axis at 3. That tells us that a is 3. So the answer is 3 times 0.1 to the x. Here's the things I would keep in mind. I would keep in mind that it's going to be in the form of f of x equals a times b to the x. If b is greater than 1, then it's going to look like this. It's going to be increasing. If b is between 0 and 1, that means it's going to be a decreasing graph. So it's going to curve the opposite direction. It's going to curve like this. Okay. The domain is always all real numbers, no matter what. The range is going to be y's greater than 0 unless there's a plus or minus some number. And remember that your y-intercept is either going to be in the form of 0, 1 or 0, a. And that's if there's a value in front of it, like 4. Okay, really and truly, if you can remember those things right there, then you should be okay on the quiz.